reading this morning comes from the book of Exodus. And we pick up the story of Moses and the Israelites after their escape from Egypt when they were at Mount Sinai. Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and as he came down from the mountain with the 2 tablets of the covenant in his hand, Moses did not know that the skin of his face shone because he had been talking with God. When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, the skin of his face was shining, and they were afraid to come near him. But Moses called to them, and Aaron and all the leaders of the congregation returned to him, and Moses spoke with them. Afterward, all the Israelites came near, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken to him on Mount Sinai. When Moses had finished speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But whenever Moses went in before the Lord to speak with them, he would take the veil off until he came out. And when he came out and told the Israelites what he had been commanded, the Israelites would see the face of Moses, that the skin of his face was shining. And Moses would put the veil on his face again until he went in to speak with him. The word of the Lord. Friends, this is an exciting day. Today we're going to have an unveiling. And, an unveiling is wonderful. Beautiful art truly reveals the glory of the artist. And what I reveal to you today, I hope, will speak to the glory of God and reveal it for all the world to see. Of course, that's the goal of preaching, isn't it? To unmask the falsehoods of this world, to reveal the truth of God, reveal the glory of God for all the world to see. Now, that was no problem with Moses, was it? When he came down from Mount Sinai, his face literally shone. It shone, the glory of God shone on his face so much that the Israelites were afraid to come near him. And he had to wear a veil, right, so they wouldn't be afraid, so they could approach him. And, that's kind of the dilemma for any preacher, isn't it? I mean, if a sermon did somehow succeed in revealing the glory of God for all of us to see, well then we would pale by comparison, right? We would seem so insignificant. I mean, what can we do? What sacrifice can we make? What work of art can we present that wouldn't pale before the glory of God? Is that why Moses wore a veil? Was he, didn't want to dishearten the Israelites so that they would give up and no longer follow on this journey through the wilderness? Well, no, he wore the veil because of his humility. He did not want to lord it over the people. He did not want to rule by fear over them. So yes, I want to reveal this work of God to you that will reflect the glory of God for all the world to see. And here it is, friends. Behold, a reflection of the glory of God. Right? You saw that coming, didn't you? I'm sure you see there. The light goes on. Friends, you are the reflection of God's glory in the world. You are the work, the handiwork of God. You bear the image of God for all the world to see. Yet how can this be? How can lives that are as, I don't know, I don't want to be rude, but as unremarkable as ours reveal God's glory in the world? Well, it's like the moon, right? You know, the moon has no light within itself. It is nothing but a cold, hard, dark rock. You know, the moon is reflective as about as pavement. What they do is reflectivity tests, you know. It's like tar. And yet it shines bright in the night sky. Why? Because it reflects the light of the sun and shines brightest, in fact, in the darkness. Well, that's like you and me. We have no light like this in us. We too are dust like the moon, and to dust we will return. And yet, when we can allow the light of God to shine through us into the world. And how is that? How do we do that? Well, for instance, those of us who claim to see on the face of Christ the glory of God, like the Israelites saw the glory of God on the face of Moses. Well, we can gather to worship God and give him all honor and glory, and thereby reflect God's glory for all to see. Those of us who claim to have been forgiven by God and given a second chance in life can forgive others. Give them a second chance. And thereby allow the light of God's forgiveness to shine through us in the world. Those of us who believe that Jesus came not to be served, but to serve, can share of our time and our energy and of our resources with those in need, as Christ did. And thereby, the light of God, the light of Christ, can shine through us in the world. In other words, through our actions, right, we can let our light shine. Or not, right? And at the other side of it, if our actions have the power to reveal God's love, power in the world, there are times our actions can be like the clouds, right? Right? The clouds, we cannot end the glory of God any more than clouds can end the reflection of the light of the moon, but they can hide it from our view. And as much as our actions, our loving others as we have been loved, our serving as Christ came to serve can reveal it, when we choose not to do, we can actually drop a veil. And people look at the church and we're not doing these things, and they don't see that glory of God reflected in the world, and they think, well, what's that thing about? That's nothing. Why would I want anything to do with that? It's just darkness. Think about it. We mean well, but how many times do we let our, not only fail to do what we think we ought, we let our anger, we let our passions, we let our apathy cloud our witness and do not reflect that glory of God in the world. Mercifully, this is not the way of God. Despite Israel's rebellion against God, it's right after Moses brings these commandments down that they run after foreign gods and begin worshiping the idols. Yet God does not allow his anger to cloud his glory. He calls the people to account, and yet in the end he forgives them, right? So too, when Jesus was abandoned by his people, betrayed by his own disciples, he didn't let that cloud his glory. And instead, he continued on that path to the cross and died to reveal that love for the world. Despite our inability or unwillingness or work that would reveal it. So friend, if my life does not reflect the glory of God, I want to know. I want you to tell me. For as painful as that truth can be, if you or I can accept it, if you or I can face that truth, that we are in fact a veil rather than a mirror reflecting the God's glory. If we can accept that, if we can accept that forgiveness and that love that God offers in that very act, we once again reveal the love and power of God's grace for all the world to see. Let all God's people say,